Hello, I welcome you all to another edition of She Code Africa webinar. This webinar is focused on empowering you to identify effective ways to look for a job. You may have the skills the employer is looking for, but never get to the interview stage if your resume does not highlight those skills. So, the goal of this webinar is for you as a job seeker to identify your employment opportunity priorities and to effectively communicate your skills in a professional resume and learn how to utilize a variety of strategies to help you stand out from the crowd. I'm Omotayo Omotola Yunis, Community Manager Lead for She Code Africa, and I'm privileged to be your host for today. Before we move on, kindly introduce yourself in this format, your name, where you're joining us from, what you do career wise, and tell us your job status. If you are employed and you are looking for a bigger opportunity or you are unemployed, let's hear from you. Hello, Atinuke. While you are dropping your introduction, Atinuke, how are you doing today? Where are you joining us from? Hello, Chiwendu Promise. I can see you. While we are doing that, please let's go on all social media platforms to tell your friends SCA webinar has started. Remember to use the hashtag SCA webinar and remember to tag She Code Africa. Let's go on all platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and do that right now. Invite your friends. Hello, Bolade Adeniji. I can see you. Promise Chiwendo. Where are you joining us from? Remember to tell us your job status. If you are employed or you are unemployed, let's know. Let's know if you are searching for job. Let's know the goal. Why you join this webinar? What do you aim to achieve? I can see you from Nairobi, Kenya. I see you, Queen. Atinuke. You're joining from YouTube. You're a software developer. Okay, you are unemployed. Don't worry, you'll get all the skills you need this evening. Oluwatimileyin, you are welcome to SCA webinar. She's joining from Nigeria. Okay. Hello. Go on Twitter, go and invite your friends, use the hashtag SCA webinar. Remember to tag She Code Africa on your post. Bami, how are you doing? Good evening. Augustina, you are joining from Argentina. It's nice to meet you. Where are the job seekers? I can't see you. Let me see you if you're a job seeker. If you are employed but you are still looking for a better opportunity, let's see you. Let's do that. Let's introduce ourselves. Remember to go on Twitter, invite your friends. I can't see people. Invite your friends. Don't come here alone. Remember to use the hashtag SCA webinar and tag She Code Africa. Chiwendu is joining from Accra, Nigeria. She's a backend developer and she's unemployed. Don't worry, you're going to get all the tips you need today. You are landing your next job soon. Margaret Akinwande, she's joining from Nigeria. She's unemployed, aspiring data scientist. I can see you. Welcome, Queen. Margaret is joining from Nairobi, Kenya. Amen. Don't worry, you are getting your next job soon. After this webinar, everything is going to change. Let's continue the introduction. I'll be right back. Chidima, I can is a front-end developer, and she's in search of a job. Don't worry, you'll get one soon. You are going to learn all the tips you need today. So let's go on all social media platforms, invite your friends and colleagues, tell them about SCA webinar using the hashtag SCA webinar. And remember to tag She Code Africa. Thank you all for joining us today. Allow me to formally introduce our guest for today, Chelsey Madsen. She's a technical recruiter at Netlify. Chelsey has been partnering with high growth organizations ranging from small startups to long established enterprises. When it comes to creating authentic candidate experiences and humanizing the journey of discovering your next perfect role, Chelsey is an active advocate. Permit me to call on Chelsey to tell us more about herself, as she will be sharing tips from her experience leading technical recruitment for some of the largest technical companies. Welcome, Chelsey.
Hi, everyone. Are you able to hear me okay?
Hi, you're welcome. It's nice to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and I am just so grateful for everyone joining. Let me make sure our presentation is kicking off. Are you able to share those slides for me?
Okay, I'll do just that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
The floor is yours now.
Oh, awesome. But yeah, my name is Chelsey, and I'm here today to just talk to you about how to navigate the job market and just feel really empowered in your job search. So I am hoping to pass along some tips and insights that I've gained that will hopefully be helpful for you as you prepare for a career change. Really, my goal with this conversation is to really kind of transition the narrative away from a job search being all about the company and just really encouraging you to feel empowered in your search. It's a big decision kind of making a career change, and I just want to make sure that I'm providing you with that toolkit. So yeah, and I guess a little bit about me. I've been in the recruiting world for a little over a decade now. I've actually worked at a number of high growth companies, and I currently work at Netlify. So I guess in terms of my experience, I actually came into recruiting from a rather non-traditional path. I actually went to school for music and then transitioned into tech specifically. So I guess throughout my career, I've been able to learn from just a lot of really amazing teams, and I'm really passionate about hiring in the tech space. So, and I have actually been in my current role with Netlify for I suppose about a year and a half now, and I lead recruiting for engineering and product roles. And on top of that, I live in Chicago. I've been working remote for about 6 or 7 years now. So I am certainly quite excited that the world seems to be embracing remote work more and more nowadays. And in my spare time, I foster lots of litters of kittens, which I've been doing for a few years. I love going to see live music, and I also enjoy hanging out with my 2 high energy dogs. So hopefully you're not hearing any noise from them during this chat. But essentially, my main focus here is just to kind of share insights that I've learned over the years through, interviewing thousands of candidates. I will say this is entirely just my personal perspective. I know every single company is a little bit different with some of their interpretations and preferences. So this is what I've experienced personally over the years. Admittedly, I'm of course skewed to the US market for the most part, since that's where I'm based, but I actually do hire globally fairly regularly as well. So, these are just kind of my opinions. I'm not speaking on behalf of Netlify. This is just kind of me as a recruiter who's done this for a bit, and I've just had a really good fortune of working for some awesome companies. So, and I'm definitely going to try to run through my presentation quickly. I certainly intend on kind of leaving plenty of time at the end for conversation and questions. And I'm really excited to learn from you and hear your feedback too. So I suppose if we could move to the next slide, I can jump into our agenda. Really here's the goal of what I wanted to cover today. So we're just going to kick this off by diving into how to really frame your job search before you start applying. Then we'll talk through some tips about how to update your resume, and then we'll go over some pointers around interviewing, generally speaking, and lastly, just really how to stay resilient in your search and kind of embrace the growth mentality. So some of the things I was hoping to work through. So I suppose next slide here. Thank you so much. All right, well, framing your job search. I suppose to kick this off, to be honest, it's hard to make a career change. It takes a ton of time and a ton of thought, all while you are maybe going through school. If you're going through boot camp, you might already be working full time. Just juggling so many things at once, it can really be overwhelming to decide even where to start. So I personally feel that this first stage is the most important, just kind of looking at how you frame your job search. And admittedly, I feel that it kind of deserves the most attention up front. You've got to kind of do that work initially and just really do your due diligence before you can kind of begin to think about your next move, or your interview process might have potential to be a little bit rocky. So I guess I kind of think of this, it really helps me when thinking about it, like perhaps the planning phases of development, or kind of how, in my case, how we approach designing hiring processes. There's really just an abundance of energy and work that you need to think through to really build out that foundation before you can kind of jump in. Or, you might be wasting your time or your team's time. So I guess with that, my first recommendation is just to kind of think about your job search by really maybe starting with creating a list of priorities and kind of narrowing down those focus lines specifically. So I tend to be a person who writes everything down. And so I like the idea of kind of developing a list of really what you're looking to gain in your next role. So, example, if it's maybe strong mentors, or if you're looking for accelerated learning opportunities, or maybe it's stability, or the importance of technologies that you're working on. Even when it comes to kind of company culture and company values, if you tend to like structure or certainty, or, if you value impact or influence, I just recommend kind of taking a deep dive, writing down all of these things, and just really digging in and thinking through those priorities, just kind of getting to the core of how things work. That said, I also really emphasize it is completely okay to not have everything figured out. Really dig in, lead with your values. I love the idea of kind of deconstructing your search initially to kind of approach it with fresh eyes. So I guess if you're truly not sure what direction you want to go in, I do recommend doing a deep dive into how you spend your time now. This is something I personally speaking have done in the past, and I thought it was really, really helpful and really helped to open my eyes. And so I love the idea of taking an entire week and kind of categorizing every single thing that you do into different categories. So kind of looking at a list of 3 different categories: what energizes you, what neutralizes you, and what drains you. And I find a lot of value in just not putting any thought into it in the moment. Just as you go through your week, continue to add on to that list. And I think you might be surprised at the end of the week when you really dig into that energized category. It just really is impactful with helping to kind of open your eyes and focus your search. And, it really kind of helps establish what those passions are. And yeah, just know that you're awesome. You're going to find somewhere that you can really bring your full self and know that you could make a difference by leading with those. So I suppose next slide, please. Awesome. So I guess we talked about kind of putting thought into where you want to take your career. And so the next stage will be really digging into researching companies. Really do your homework on the company and just think through what unique skills you can bring. LinkedIn is an awesome avenue, of course, to be able to do your research on and, kind of dig into what types of folks work at the company. You never know, you might know someone who works there that you could really reach out to learn more. There's also so many amazing online communities, whether it's things like meetups or, kind of Slack groups. And, that'll really help to just make sure that, it might be a good fit for you. That said, I do caution you when reaching out, just be really thoughtful and careful about, making sure that you're not kind of having a spamming tendency to your network. Just try to avoid, reaching out to people by asking them to do things blindly for you. They're less likely to want to help you when you're blindly asking for referrals and things. So I really just think it's helpful to kind of be genuine, and make sure that that person can really effectively advocate for you. Just be really authentic and targeted. Even when messages, it doesn't need to be complex either. Would say, perhaps you could just mention that, you're looking for your next role and you've applied at their company, and maybe just ask how they like it there. And, that might help to kick off the conversation. And next slide, please. Awesome. Well, perfect. Well, I guess after you've narrowed down kind of what you want to focus on in your next move, it's time to jump into updating that resume, which I know it can seem like such a daunting task, but I do recommend, constantly revisiting that list of priorities and just really help that guide you in your resume specifically. Just remember, the goal of your resume is to really summarize. It's really a document where you can put all of your stories from your career so far in a concise format. So always remember your audience, certainly, when it comes to building your resume, and just be really intentional. Your resume is going to be that first impression with the company, and it's important to kind of think through how you want to go about standing out. Recruiters are receiving hundreds or even thousands of resumes per role, depending on the organization. So it's just important that you put a lot of thought and really write your resume to customize it for your audience. Just kind of think of that fact at the same time that each company is getting hundreds of applications, even as a positive thing, because that means that if you take that extra energy and effort to customize and really tweak your resume, that means you're going to be able to stand out. So I almost think about it the same way as, think about how you're building software. Think about, what the user needs are and really focus on that. So, and next slide, please. Awesome. Yeah, so I suppose with resume formatting, definitely just focus on considering how much time recruiters are going to be spending with your resume. So, keep that experience brief and concise. Just kind of remember that resume's goal is to really get your foot in the door and kick off that initial conversation, not necessarily to cover everything that you've done over several pages, since you have such a brief period of time to make that first impression. So you should really be using that resume for someone to kind of understand your experience at a glance. So they should be able to see in, let's say 5 to 10 seconds of looking at your resume, what your relevant experience is for the role. And it's just a good opportunity for you to kind of be really concise and clearly communicate with the user too. So just kind of think of it as making it as obvious as possible that you're the right candidate for the job. Now, with the resume, I would say another piece to consider is really making sure that your resume matches your LinkedIn profile too. I know it can certainly be a flag if, dates aren't aligned, perhaps if there's inconsistencies when it comes to like titles or descriptions and things like that. So if there aren't matches there might be concerns if they're, telling the truth and things like that. So I say really focus in and make sure those align. And I suppose when it comes to applying for specific jobs, really tailor your resume to that job and highlight the parts that you think align with the job. Customization is definitely key. Your resume is just kind of telling that story of why you apply for the role, or I'm sorry, why you qualify for the role, just making it really obvious. And, it's the most important thing you can do to really improve your chances of moving forward, just to make it absolutely clear that you fit the role that you're applying for. I'm thinking if it helps kind of see it through a recruiter's lens too. I think when I'm looking through a resume, I am looking for really predetermined qualifications. So, just double check that job description. For example, if you're looking at specific technologies that are highlighted and things like that, just make sure that you review that description carefully and really clearly address what qualifications your experience aligns with. So, admittedly, it's less about kind of colors and formatting and all that good stuff from my standpoint personally. I'm looking to see that you're meeting alignment when it comes to meeting the qualifications for the role. I suppose that said, when thinking about listing technologies, I do caution you to be careful of what you listed and really be deliberate and make sure that that's something that you've had experience with. Sometimes seeing a giant list of technologies can be a flag. It's certainly okay to mention that you've studied a certain language, but the higher the level of the role, the more likely that companies are going to be looking for production level experience. So, when you're questioned in interviews about a specific technology that you have listed, and, maybe the answer is that you've, let's say, used it for a pet project a couple years ago, but you don't remember it, it might be a flag, because, it's kind of assumed that the technologies you've listed on your resume are ones that you can jump into quickly and run with. So just generally speaking, it's, kind of important to be honest about your skills and your experience and just what you know and don't know. But at the same time, if this is your first role and maybe if you haven't had production level opportunities yet, it actually really helps to stand out if you include examples of your code. If you've got things like GitHub links, or if you've contributed to open source projects, you can really share that to just help with differentiating yourself. So pet projects are awesome. It really kind of shows that learning agility and that passion. And, it's really great to kind of get that visibility into your code too. So, just kind of really focus on differentiating those high impact projects and, kind of quantifying your success. So kind of helps with a show versus tell mentality. But and just think about the things that you're proud of so far in your career. What's the story that you can tell on paper about this? And certainly with resume formatting, just kind of consider the limited time that folks are going to spend with your resume. Bullet points are conversation starters. So just kind of demonstrating tangible accomplishments to really sell your experience. And data certainly helps with that as well. Another tip, again, this is just kind of my personal preference, that I do recommend to be really deliberate about the space that you're using on your resume. And I typically recommend not actually providing references on your CV, really focused on listing achievements instead of kind of some of these other space fillers and things like that. But I also know it can be frustrating, kind of limiting your experience to only a page or two. It can almost feel demoralizing, kind of transitioning that into a limited text. But just really keep in mind that resume's goal is to kind of get your foot in the door and start that initial conversation, and just focusing on emphasizing what is priorities in the job description and, assuming that aligns with your experience. So just kind of think of it as making sure that that recruiter is going to be able to advocate effectively for you. If you do feel that there's solid alignment, even including things like a summary or, a bulleted paragraph that really emphasizes that you do have that experience, whether it's on a resume or a cover letter. But, when I'm looking at that resume, my goal is to really take away that you have made it very obvious that you fit the qualifications, and, I can effectively advocate for you. So I'm really just keeping an eye out for something that will tell me that you have the experience that I need to help us as an organization solve a specific problem that we're hiring for. So just really focusing on that concept and making it obvious that you've done that work. And honestly, just like a job description should be a marketing document, your resume should be your way of marketing yourself to the company. So just tell me why I should reach out to you through kind of aligning those concepts. I feel like I do get a lot of questions about cover letters, which can be tricky. It kind of depends on what different organizations are looking for. You can really use your cover letter as a way to emphasize alignment. Not all companies require it, certainly, but just kind of think of it as a way to really connect the dots with the role in your experience. I personally speaking, I really enjoy being able to see your personality come out in your cover letter as well. So, you can really cater that to the role. And I think this is probably specific to tech companies. I'm not sure that this would work at, larger like financial or consulting organizations, but I tend to prefer folks who have used, like, kind of moved away from traditional templates. I think the more personality, the better. You can really kind of use that as an opportunity to draw that line from your experience. For example, if the role requires, let's say, several years of Java experience, just kind of specifically calling that out helps. I can really recall times where I've received really exceptionally creative cover letters. I've seen candidates in the past who have like creative images and just kind of go above and beyond to talk through why they resonated with the company goals or, specific highlights on the job description. I immediately get excited to see a lot of, that extra effort and that extra customization for it. But yeah, and even if a cover letter isn't required, it might also help if there's like an application question, for example, why you're applying. I think it's great to fill that out. It really kind of helps you to just stand out and really use that as an opportunity to kind of emphasize why you're a fit. So just kind of think about that as an opportunity to take that step and telling, I guess, the organization how excited you are about them. And lastly, I would say always send a PDF. Formatting can get tricky in other avenues. And so PDFs are probably your best bet, and of course, just general resume tips, always look out for proofreading and spelling errors and, have a friend take a second peek at it just so, you kind of covered the grounds with that. But yeah, well, I suppose next slide. All right, in terms of applying, so definitely I do tend to recommend that folks make sure that you're not blindly applying for roles, making sure that you really cater your resume to your audience and know what you want to do and don't want to do, and just kind of avoid firing resumes off into a vacuum. Don't just kind of click apply and forget about it. I would say that's a way that your resume kind of lands in a pile and might not get the attention that it deserves. So just do your homework and know the why behind each role that you're applying for, and just be prepared to articulate that during your initial conversations. But quality over quantity is usually what I tend to lean on. I think if you're being really deliberate about where you're applying, that really helps. With timing, when it comes to applying for roles, I know it can feel like there's so much to think about, when you find an interesting role and you're really excited about it. But I do recommend, don't delay putting that resume in. You may lose out just for things like time. You maybe took too long to apply and things like that. And I would say when it comes to applying, empathy and patience are really key. Just understanding that it's been a tough year. There are a lot of folks looking for work. Just always follow up and be really kind and authentic. Never be afraid to kind of check in or follow up on your resume too. That'll kind of help prioritize you over an abundance of other candidates just by asking for clarity. If you need clarity about the role or about the resume, just being really genuine and kind of customizing those research. So, gosh, I think I've had multiple times where I posted a role and I've received hundreds of applications, even in a weekend alone. But I think when candidates reach out to me with a customized email, I do really appreciate that extra effort. But just kind of focus on that customization piece. If you're sending like a generic follow-up with, nothing that kind of highlights what's custom, what you love about the team. For example, I really recommend leaning into, if there's something specifically about the company that you love, or what about the role makes you the best fit. Just be really, really customize that. And, you want to make sure it's not coming across as spam or something that you're sending to lots and lots of organizations. When I get an email from someone who lists a personal experience of, why they love using our product, or, for example, maybe if they looked at my LinkedIn profile and they perhaps mentioned something specifically about, my hobbies or background, or, things like that, it really does stand out. It shows that they took that extra effort. So, and I do caution you as well, just always check your spam folder in your email. Sometimes applications and those types of emails can get flagged accidentally, and you never know what you're missing out on. And yeah, I suppose next slide, please. And yeah, and I suppose when you do hear back from organizations, that first interview is a really awesome opportunity for you to get to know the company, and just make sure that it's going to be a really good match with your values. So revisit that list of priorities that you initially came up with and made early on in your search. For example, maybe if you prioritize learning or growth opportunities or impact or things like that, that's something that you can really focus on, and kind of categorize those. Another piece to consider, I would say, when it comes to interviews, just really pace yourself too. I know it's going to be hard to juggle more than a few interviews at a time. So, if you're talking to 10 plus companies, it might indicate that you're not being targeted enough in your search. Just, make sure that you set those boundaries. It's okay to take breaks as well, and be really kind to yourself. It can be exhausting going through a job search, after you're working full time or going to school. So it's important to give yourself time to breathe. So, and when it comes to that first interview, I would say it can certainly be nerve-wracking, but just really keep in mind that this is as much of a time for you to interview the company as it is for the company to interview you. So they're hiring for the role to solve a really specific problem, and you might be the solution. So feel really empowered and kind of shift your thinking and use that interview as an opportunity to learn. I think it's always helped me in the past to really kind of reframe your job search and really ask yourself, what can you learn from this interview and take away? During technical screenings or just kind of questions in general in the interview, I do recommend as well that, it's okay to say when you don't know something. I think, if you don't know, that's okay. Kind of ask what the correct answer is, and just use that as an opportunity to really learn and improve. And I suppose dig a bit more into that imposter syndrome, kind of evolve that thought process of, I don't belong here if you don't know. Just kind of think about it as this is a learning opportunity for you to grow. And just really approaching your job search in an interactive way is really, really helpful. It's a learning experience. You can use it as a growth opportunities. Think of every single interview as practicing. It'll just continue to help you really learn and improve. But overall, interviewing is just hard. I think with so many things going on in the world, it's just, there's so many stresses. So don't be too hard on yourself. Just, really lean into that interview prep and kind of focus on that. I guess when it comes to preparing for interviews, personally speaking, I'm actually an introvert. So I need to rehearse and prepare. I will actually rehearse a lot of my answers out loud to really gain that confidence. I guess just putting yourself on the spot and exerting that much energy in a social setting through interviews can be so tough if it's not something you're used to. So, just really kind of come back to thinking about the audience and what you're looking to learn from the interview. Be really thoughtful and concise with your answers as well. Kind of use different frameworks to really organize your thoughts. Let's say, for example, if during the question, if you need more information, or Perhaps if the question is too broad, it's okay to ask for clarifying questions as well. Long-winded answers can cause interviewers to lose interest. So admittedly, even if you're concerned about not being concise enough, when you're halfway through that response, it's certainly okay to ask at the same time, did that give you enough information, or should I continue? Really kind of view it as an interactive conversation. Even through preparing, I think it might help as well to just even do things like record your answers. You can't really narrow down and those concise answers without trying to kind of prepare beforehand. So, just record yourself. It'll really help to pinpoint where you can make improvements. And of course, traditionally in interviews, just always be prepared to kind of share what you're doing currently and what you want to be doing. And, teams really just want to know your story. So think about it from a storytelling perspective. Now, I would say when it comes to the folks that you're chatting with, really do that research on who you're interviewing with. Take a peek at their LinkedIn, make sure you know their experience, and just use that interview as an opportunity to learn about their journey too. I think it definitely helps to put in that additional effort. And I suppose lastly, documentation is so important to me. And so this is just my personal preference. I tend to write a lot of things down. And so it helps to kind of keep written reminders for interviews if you need to as well. Just, prepping for an interview can seem so daunting. So just before the interview, it's okay to ask your recruiter if, what to expect from the conversations. Really, a recruiter's role is to be your advocate, so it's important to build those relationships. So never be shy. Feel free to ask questions. But now, I suppose when it comes to the very end of an interview, I'm hoping, your interview team will leave plenty of time for questions. And so when thinking about what questions you want to ask in that interview, I do recommend that you frame that interview question specifically by asking yourself if the answer to the question would change your decision about working there. If the answer is no, I would say just try to avoid answering or asking that altogether. Just really kind of put a lot of thought into what you want to know about the company, and don't be afraid to follow up with additional questions even after your interview. It'll really show your interest in the organization and will definitely work in your favor. So I know it can be tempting as well to ask generic questions just because, that's what you're told to do in interviews, but just really feel empowered to use it to your advantage. Curiosity is just so important in technical roles, and just know the ball just isn't in the company's court. It's a life-changing decision for you, and it's important for you to know if it's going to be a good match. So I suppose all that said, after you've kind of finished up your interviews and you're not sure when you're going to hear back about the results, just don't be shy. Never be afraid to follow up, even if it's multiple times. I think one of the biggest mistakes I have heard in job searches is feeling shy about following up. You've invested your time and energy into the company, and you deserve to know those updates and conclusions. So I feel like I've heard so many stories about, candidates being ghosted after interviews, but just kind of shift that perspective of, know that the company is dealing with a significant amount of roles and hundreds of candidates at once. So it's never bad to reach out and check in with them. Sometimes decisions just take time, and, you never know what's happening in the background. So kind of just remember that there's so many factors happening behind the scenes. It's okay to follow up. I guess I do typically recommend giving a company at least, maybe a few days, even a week before your first follow up. But if you don't hear back, keep checking in. I would say ultimately, if you don't fail in your job search, then maybe you're playing it safe. Rejection is hard, but just remember that there are so many variables in the hiring process that are really out of your control. It's kind of not just about you. If you're rejected, it's not personal. Sometimes in a job search, it really just comes down to being in the right place at the right time. Then just know you kind of need to stay persistent. But thinking at that holistic process as well, when you've gone through interviews, that's really benefited your skills. Hopefully that gave you some practice and the ability to learn more. You never know in the future. So just be really kind to yourself and everything will happen as it should. So, when you view challenges as opportunities, you're going to gain that compassion for yourself and who you've connected with. But it can just be hard to interview. You're so vulnerable and you can feel insecure, but just really kind of shift that and have this sense of pride that you're really stretching yourself and you're learning and growing and, kind of going through that job search is a journey. There's a lot that you can learn from it. So, I know lastly, I know the sting of rejection notes is hard. It's hard to dedicate so much time into, the process to be rejected, but don't be afraid to ask for feedback. The worst you can hear is no. So, just keep following up and it's okay to ask for clarity. Just kind of remember that you're working with humans and recruiters are there to be your advocate. So I suppose just to summarize, kind of be kind to yourself. You're learning and growing through the job search. And I know this is a lot to throw at you too. So I hope this is helpful. I'm super excited to be a resource for you. If you ever have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Keep me updated on what's working. Reach out if you have questions. But yeah, I'm excited to hear your feedback. Cool. I wonder if we can, happy to open it up for any Q&A.
Hi, Chelsey. Looks like our host is having a little connection issues.
Oh,
So I would fill in for her up until she joins in. We have a few questions that we have from the internal team, and which might summarize a few other people's questions as well. So the first one is already on the screen. How can you stand out to your company of choice before or while you're applying for any particular role? I mean, what are the best ways that you can place yourself under the radar of potential recruiters?
such a good question. I guess there's so many factors too. I would say, really, really emphasize kind of, how much you resonate with the values of an organization. I think that really helps stand out. That shows that you've gone above and beyond with, connected dots when it comes to those values and the role itself. Don't be afraid to reach out to folks if, there's someone on the team that if, you have curiosity about the role. Never hesitate to just be authentic and customize and, kind of really focus in on that. I would say outside of that, be really active in the community. And so, being active in things like Slack groups or, kind of side projects or things like that is always really helpful just to show your passion and excitement for the space.
Thank you so much, Chelsey. Sorry, my network was kind of conflicting. Sorry. So thank you so much for the wonderful presentation and the tips. I'm sure our audience have learned and they've jotted down some of the tips, so that it will help them in their next application. The second question. Okay, before we move on to the second question, please drop your questions. If you have any questions for the audience, for the guests, please remember to drop it here and share the tips you've learned here on all social media platforms. Remember to use the hashtag SCA webinar and tag She Could Africa. So let me move to the next question we have here. We know how powerful tool networking is, especially for a job seeker. What are some of the strategies you suggest for one to effectively reach out and connect with potential employees or people who work in such companies?
Yeah. Such a great question. I would say when it comes to networking, really lead with authenticity. Lead with curiosity and authenticity. If you're looking, for example, if you find an engineer that you really admire, you're always welcome to, reach out to folks like that and, just kind of say, I admire your career. I want to hear about your journey. Just kind of approaching that with a way of a lens of learning, I think is really, really helpful with that. But just lead with authenticity.
Okay, thank you for the tips. The third question we have here is, as a technical recruiter, what are the key things you look out for when selecting a candidate for a particular role? What are the key things you look out for?
Yeah. Ooh, I think it might depend on the role, but generally speaking, I really look for a strong learning agility. I think that piece is the most important thing that you can have is curiosity and a learning agility within technical roles because technologies evolve so quickly. So, that piece and just kind of the general passion for working in tech and for whatever specialized area you're digging into, to me is the most important. So learning and agility and passion, I would say.
Okay, thank you for the tip. And lastly, we all know that lately more people are looking out for remote roles, especially since the pandemic happened. Things such person should improve upon or work on in order to stand a good chance at landing such roles?
Ooh, good question. I am a huge, huge remote advocate, so I could go on and on. I'm very excited about the world embracing remote work more and more. In terms of skills to focus in on, I guess kind of a unique skill when working remotely is written communication. So I would say my first advice would be to focus on how you communicate on a written basis. That, for example, in the last two roles I've held, they've been, remote positions, and a lot of the communication is done through things like GitHub issues or, Slack or Notion or things like that. So just being able to communicate in a really concise manner through a lot of those mediums, I think is really something to focus in on. And I suppose even when kind of, gaining those skills, it's also helpful if maybe you contribute to projects with global teams, kind of having that experience. Maybe if you're not working with teams outside of your time zone currently, just kind of gaining that exposure through side projects and things might be helpful.
Okay, thank you so much for the tips once again. So we'll take questions from our audience now. Okay, we have one from Vanessa Christian. She's asking, how does one display learning agility in CV or resume?
I love this question because it's hard, right? It's hard to kind of display that value. I would say showing those pet projects that you worked on, having a section where you talk through what open source projects you've contributed to, what you're kind of working on the side. If you're part of, other meetups or associations, put those on your resume. I think that really shows that you're kind of going above and beyond. Oh, I'm so sorry. I think my audio cut out.
Okay, sorry.
Oh.
We have another question from One Day Azan. She's asking if it's okay to ask question after an interview. Does it make an employee look unserious?
Ooh, I say yes. I say it shows that you're excited about the role. It shows that you've been thinking about it, you go above and beyond. So I think it's great to always ask follow-up questions. It's as much of a time for the organization to interview you as it is for you to interview the company. So really feel empowered to ask those.
Okay, thank you so much for those tips you've shared. I'm very sure we've learned a lot today. I personally have learned the power of end list, that is to energize, to neutralize, and to drain, and how it is essential for you to use your skills, to state how you use your skills in your previous experience, and spell out, and also to spell out your personality, and the power of cover letter. Even though sometimes when it's not required, it is very, very important to add it. You have to be genuine so that someone will recommend you. And finally, follow up after interview, right? Thank you so much. It was, yeah, okay. There's no more question, yeah, right? Remember to drop your question, and you can follow Chelsey on our LinkedIn page. We'll drop the link in the comment section. Okay, what a time well spent. I'm very sure our audience have learnt greatly from your presentation. Thanks for honoring us with your presence today. It's really nice having you. Thank you so much, Chelsey.
Thank you all so much. I'm excited to connect again in the future.
Thank you, Chelsey. Special thanks to our audience. Thank you. We really appreciate your presence, and without you, without doubt, we are very sure you have been empowered. Now that you have all the tips you need for your next application, it's time for action. Put all those tips into action and watch yourself land your dream job. Remember to share the impact from this webinar via all social media platform using SCA webinar hashtag, and remember to tag us at She Code Africa. By doing this, you're also empowering someone else who could probably make it to this event. So before you go, remember to click on the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to She Code Africa YouTube channel. And also, if you are not part of our community, join us to get yourself a circle of in your technical field, to get more resources, to build yourself on the projects you are working on, and to ask an expert in the technical field about any challenge or challenges you're facing in the projects you're working on. Also, to find collaboration buddies. It is very, very important. Join us to be our besties using the link that will be dropped on the comment section. It will also be displayed on our screen. We can't wait to welcome you. SCA is always here to empower and celebrate women in tech across Africa. And our vision is to have an Africa where women are equally represented across all career roles in technology. So watch out as we roll out application for some of our programs, especially the Cohort 5 of our mentoring program, which will be announced via all our other social media platforms. Thank you once again. Till we see you next time. Bye bye.